Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last Zinester Talk. Zinester
Oh,
Talk episode 9. Can't believe we did 9 of these. So, tonight we're going to talk about the zines of Camille Pilar, Shelby Krishnan, who was actually with us last week for another talk. So, here she is again, and Robin Angelo Yankin. And I guess that's it. And I'll leave it to you three to start. Fun, guys.
okay. Thank you, Raf. Okay, so
Rob.
you have experience. How did you start things off the last time?
Okay, last time we had staff. She was the she was kind of the moderator who was not moderating. She was kind of like leading a lot of things along the way, and we were like, it was a first time for all of us. We were like, there was like a moment of silence, and then she just kick-started, practically just introduced ourselves. So I'm Shelby. So this is my first ever zine. I've been writing a lot, always just in my journal. It's been there for like thousands of years. It finally came out this year thanks to COVID. I think I was feeling a bit stressed and all and whatnot. And I was like, let's just do this. And I started publishing things out, and that's how the zine came about.
Okay, cool. You next.
Who's going next? Maybe I mute myself first.
You're... okay, I'll
Okay,
go
I'll
next.
pass it to Camille.
Oh, you pick who's next.
Yeah, I just pick Camille.
Okay, I got picked. Okay, so hi, I'm Camille Pilar. This is also my first ever zine, although I've also been writing pretty much mostly for other people, and this is like the year that I said, okay, I'm gonna start writing for myself. Although I have been posting, um, I've been posting ever since Live Journal. I Were you all born then yet? How old were you when Live Journal came out? So I was in college during LiveJournal, and that eventually became multiplied, and it became Tumblr, and then just there's bits of my work all over cyberspace. And I guess this zine was the perfect opportunity to just launch into a different platform, because I find Instagram to be very limiting for long form or for poetry or for anything text based, especially since it's become more of a multimedia thing. Like, everyone's into reels and like fast, shiny, funny memes and reels. So, yeah, so this is just taking back space for the page, long form or whatever it may be. So yeah, I'm from the Philippines. I am based in San Juan, La Union. Okay, now tagging my fellow Filipino.
Good evening, Camille, Shelby. My name is Robin Angelo Yankin. I am currently based in the Philippines. I'm from Iloilo City. I've actually been published since I've actually started writing rather since I was 17, and I published my first work around 18 with a short story collection, self-published, and I also wrote two novels. They're on Shopee right now if you'd like to check them out. And um, the zine I have now, it's actually the first thing I published under my own name. Because I usually go by a pseudonym online. So, Toshiro Hiroshi. The way it came out was like I started with Hiroshi, and then I switched letters around and then added to, so that it became Toshiro Hiroshi. So yeah. Uh, and this zine, in a sense, is an extension of, let's say, my worldview, my philosophy. That you get these fragmented bits and pieces of um, what the world is, what the world could be. And yeah, looking forward to discussing the zines with you guys.
Okay. So
fine.
Raf asked in the comments, why did you choose to use a pseudonym before? But also, I'd also want to ask, what is it about the zine format that made you comfortable enough to use your real name?
Um. Okay. Interesting story. I started off with a pseudonym when I was 18 when I released my first work. Actually, before I even released my own work, I went by pseudonym because I still felt like my writing hadn't matured enough yet. My writing was in its rough stages back then when I was 17, 18. And with the zine format, I kind of felt confident to use my real name because by then I've already had some semblance of writing education, so to speak. Like I've read wider, and I felt comfortable enough to be connected with my work through my real name.
That makes sense. Did you go through a similar phase, Shelby? Like
Uh,
line
I
or
don't know. Maybe this feels like so much self love, but I think I've always used my name, regardless of how I was writing. I don't know, because I think it's really because I write based on a lot of my own emotions and experiences of things I see around me. I felt very comfortable using my name because if not, I felt a bit disconnected. I don't, yeah.
okay.
Ooh, but I wanted to ask actually, like, how do I actually call you, like, Camille? Like, do you have like
Yeah.
name, or
Camille
how
is
can we
good.
address? Okay. Oh no, Camille. Sorry. Is it Robin?
Yes, yes, Robin. Yes,
Okay.
Robin is fine.
Sorry. Oh, okay. I think the first thing that struck about your book is like I actually loved all your titles. I think it's such like it's so insane,
Wow.
and how I think people don't give it much. And
Yeah.
when you look at a title, you're just like, it's another title. Or
Oh
when I
yeah,
saw
yeah.
yours and together with the poetry, I'm like, ooh, that's like so bomb. Like, what inspired you to like come up with this really? I don't know. It's like very interesting for me. The titles, like, what is the selection process like? How did you decide to have those titles?
Yeah, interesting, interesting. So actually, that project came about because of eight letters. Like, if not for eight letters, I wouldn't have started this project. So basically, it's about this unnamed I character who stays up after New Year's Eve, listens to a playlist, and whatever music he listens to, that's what the stories revolve around.
Oh, that
And
is so.
Oh, okay.
yeah, basically.
So EADG. Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is dope.
I found it like because at the start, the characters like putting on headphones, and so as the titles rolled out, it seemed to me it was a playlist, like because they were all songs, tracks.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you got that right.
Is it your personal playlist? Do you
Yeah.
listen?
um, oh, most of the songs on there I've actually had to listen to. Well, actually, I listen to them for leisure sometimes, of course. But um, when I made that project, like I really had to zero in on what the songs are, each of them, like how they fit into a narrative, how they
Mm.
connect to each other in unexpected ways. That's how I got the stories to come about organically, you could say.
So you it was
So
actually based by the songs. Like, that's what inspired you to come up with the whole thing.
Yes, yeah, the songs are enough inspiration for me, I'd say.
Oh, that is so nice.
which came first most of the time, the song or the story?
Most of the time. I'd actually say the songs came most of the time, but in some cases, the story came first. Like, for example, in that story, "Song of the Kamikaze Pilots," like by Anonymous. That's one example of what the story coming first. In that, like for example, I've had that story brewing in me ever since listened to the song years ago, but I didn't know how quite to put it into words until that challenge by Eight Letters, and that's when I finally worked on what I shaping that random thought I've had years ago.
Okay.
That's nice.
Okay, so we've been asking you questions. Maybe you
Ah,
ask questions.
oh yeah. um. Camille. Your poems, like, I'm really wondering how your creation process is based on those poems, because from what I've read, they've been able to capture this essence of longing. Almost all of them have this essence of longing, and um, they somehow speak to me in a nostalgic way, you could say.
Okay, so the zine is actually a collection of poems that I've been writing since 2017. And then I just
Mm,
organized them, like on love, on self, society, when I just like took back everything that I already wrote and then just presented them in such a way, the Virgo in me, to organize them. But for the creation process, um, that's something I think we can all agree on, that sometimes the moment is just ripe for writing, and then some days you don't write at all. But it's taken me the wealth
definitely.
of the years that have passed, to really zero in on moments where I am able to flow. So I find that I am able to create better when there is running water, or when there's water around me. I find that to be my element. I know Shelby also likes to be with nature or with nature
Mhm.
nearby. Uh,
Yeah.
I also find that there's a difference when you're writing beside a body of water versus when you're writing beside trees, or when you're in the mountains.
Mm,
So it's all these signals, the muse is always there. It's just a matter of when you catch her, or like how can she find you if you're not there for her to find you. So something like that. I used to write coming from more of like personal experiences and personal yearning. Those were my live journal or Tumblr days. I'd be
mm,
writing about my feelings, or like trying to make sense or process my emotions, until eventually I think it's really the time, distance, and the distance that time has provided me to be able to view things. That's why it's revision. So like I'm viewing everything I've written in a new way. So these may be old work, but then I'm always trying to present them in new ways. So I
mm,
guess that's my flow. So one, it's the environment. I write better when I'm near water. And then next, it's I like to give it distance, because most of the time when I write something, like you're so excited, oh, this is brilliant, this is gonna win so and so award, blah blah blah,
mm,
and then next day or like a week after, you're like, it's not that great. So it's that, yeah, it's just that wealth of time and distance for you to be able to step out of your body of work for a while. Then when you return, I guess that's where the yearning is, because like when you're coming back to them, you're yearning for this certain point in your life when you were feeling this and when you were writing this way. So yeah,
mm.
thanks for the question. How about you,
And
Shep?
Shelby, yeah, Shelby.
Yeah. I think I kind of really similarly relate to Camille. There are days I can just write, and sometimes I just need space to process things. And I do come back, and I'm like, oh, I feel the same way. I'm like, oh, I've written something so good today, and I'm like, this is gonna be the greatest thing ever. And then like a week later, I'm like, man, it's like I think I can improve this. And apart from having space, I do like very much being near nature. And I think I was telling in my last session, Zinester Talk, I named my book of sound sights because I think what helped me most in this journey of doing this book is actually being near water. So when you said that, I'm like, like
Yeah.
that silence gives you, it's just very nice. So and yeah, I'm very random. Whenever I'm near nature, whenever I'm near things, I just write things. I give myself space. I relook and I write. And sometimes the space is very long. It's not even a week. It's like months, a year. And I come
Mm.
back, I can get this doing. So this has also been my collection of during the COVID period. I mean, I was at home, was like stressed with work and everything. So I just started penning down things. And when Series Circle came about, and they was like, oh, you can publish a zine. I started looking back at everything. I started rearranging things in the storyline that I liked. Yeah, pretty much that actually.
Yeah. I we have a similar process, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's tried and tested, guys. You can do the same. Go to bodies of water, dig up your old journals, go treasure hunting.
Yes, we approve.
Where okay, I have a question. So this is my first zine, Shelby's first zine, and obviously Robin
Mhm.
has had a body of published work before him. What made you, I guess, confident enough in your own work that you could put it out there as early as you did? Because I feel like that's always been my hesitation as a writer. I'm like just too harsh on myself, although I've been writing for over a decade, 2 decades even, but I'm just cowardly about it.
Oh, he just left.
Okay, thanks for being brave.
Not
So much for being brave.
It's like, oh, I need some time to process this question.
That's
But
what
it's
I
what,
yeah, like
sorry,
that.
no,
That's what I
I
find
do
inspiring.
agree. Yeah,
He's able to publish,
yeah.
like, even with a
I've
pseudonym.
been writing I've been
Mm.
writing for a very long time, and I think apart from me being, I was always a bit scared. So I'm like, should I or should I not? Will people really like it? Like, and then I'm also afraid, like, what if people find out these are my emotions, these are how I feel. So
Yeah,
I always have been a bit scared. So it's quite impressive that he has done a lot of body of work, and he's back.
are you back?
Hi, Robin.
Hello, hello.
What? Okay.
Apologies. My signal is kind of slow right now.
Oh, okay. No problem. We can still hear you though.
Oh,
Yeah.
I could still hear you guys.
Yes, I was gonna say that's the Philippines.
The Philippines.
So yeah, Robin, what made you or what helped you decide to just put your work out there?
Hmm. When I first started out writing, I really, uh, it really became this like I kind of had this metamorphosis in a sense because I started out writing because I wanted to um save myself in a way because I before I started writing I was in a position where I didn't know what to do with my life, where I I've done I thought I've done everything I can, but then there is something missing. There's this big gaping void in me, and by writing I kind of had this outlet. And first I started writing for myself, but became as soon as I gained enough confidence, like I started sharing my work first with my friends, my classmates, and I've gotten quite overwhelming reception from them. So I thought this might be a sign to pursue writing. And if not for the encouragement of um, my old friends before, I wouldn't have continued what I've been doing right now.
Hey, good support group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, by the way, Robin, did you share how is your writing process is like? Because you
Oh,
asked
yeah,
us just now.
yeah.
Ah,
Ah, yes. Oh, right. Okay. So my writing process is actually quite random. You could say there are many um like one day I do this, one day I do that. Like I really have a very random process. But the most consistent ones are have to be immersion, and yeah, immersion is the biggest one, I have to say. Since before I start writing anything, I immerse myself. I research a topic. Like for example, um, let's say I'd be writing about something set in the 1960s, for example. So by setting that target date, I'd find songs set 19 songs from the 1960s, for example, and listen to them. I try to study how people dressed, how manners were like, what the political historical situation was at the time, so that I could hopefully arrive at a um closest representation of what I hope to express with the story, and of course, so that I do justice to the elements of the story. And another one would have to be music, of course. Like Murakami said, like music's surprisingly helpful in writing because it it really does something to your writing. I'm not really sure what it does, but it just makes your writing a bit that much better. Like,
yeah.
like
It's
it's
like a
hard to
comb.
explain.
It combs your
Yes,
thought. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It
Mm,
calms your thought.
Yeah. I used to really listen to music before writing as well until eventually you kind of know how to just summon a song within you. So even if you're not listening to it physically, it's just there. I don't know if like the
Yeah.
mood, you know it.
yeah, I get what you mean actually.
Yeah. Cause so now sometimes if I listen to a song, I just wanna listen to it. I can't like be on my headphones and then writing. So I just
Yeah,
wanna like savor the song. So that's kind of a development. So before I'd be writing, but I find that what I write will be influenced by the song so much. So
mm-hmm.
now I'm writing from like
Just
core,
your
like
own. Yeah,
experiences or my own thoughts and imagination.
yeah,
Mm. So in a way, the songs influence how you write instead of you influencing what you write.
I
Is
noticed
that?
that before, yeah, before. Like
Mm.
so when I like simplistically saying, like let's say if I'm listening to sad songs, then I'd be writing the saddest lines.
that,
Uh,
Ah, yes.
yeah.
or if I'm listening to something more hardcore or rock or aggressive, then my lines will be angrier,
Anger.
edgier.
Yes. And
So
I
I,
ac-
yeah, go.
and I actually felt some of that anger in your poems in society part. That has to be my favorite section of your zine.
Okay. Oh, that no music involved, just pure news, current events during that time.
Mm.
So that was
Mm,
pre-pandemic, and yeah, well, that's great. No, it's good to know that that is appreciated. I feel like most of the poems um, that people like from me are, I don't know how to describe it. It's mostly the tender longing, as you said,
Mm.
the
I
the
think it's
sweet
probably just
stuff.
more relatable for people on a daily
Ah,
basis,
yeah.
like the basic human need. everybody's like, I
Definitely.
can feel this. Yeah.
Okay. Um okay, so
Mm.
question for both of you. How do you know a work is done? Like, so Shelby, I notice you have a lot of like shorter poems and then slightly
Yes.
longer. And but I like that everything is like can be compact. I like to think that poems can be held in your hands, like they're like objects that you can touch. So I like that your poems are very like there. I can hold it exactly like a key or a coin. How do
Mm.
you know that? Okay, that's the last line.
So I think most of the poems that I've written there, I have like rewritten it a few times. I went back. So I think again, very similar to Robin, I write very random stuff. Every time I wake up, if I feel like writing 3 lines, I just write it first. And then another week later, I just go by and I was like, I will look at it like, what kind of emotions can I evoke from this? And I'm also very dependent with the nature around me. I'm like, oh, trees. Maybe you can write something. I don't know. Being around jungle makes me feel small and lonely, but not lonely. Feelings like that. So I just write based on that. So some days I am able to write more, and I think it's also very much instinct. And I feel like, okay, I think I reached the end of this. Like, this is just nice to end it here. But it does go through like few rounds of editing before I'm quite satisfied. I've actually shortened some of the longer ones I've written. I'm like, oh, this is too much. We're talking too much. We should shorten it. So I do go through a process of editing actually. Yeah.
Also, you, Robin, I also noticed like the length of the pieces in the zine were very consistent. I'm even
Yes.
tempted to word count everything and like, did he do a specific
You're
word
so
count?
clean.
Yeah, 300.
Yes, actually.
You did?
Yes, I did
You
actually.
did?
Oh my
Yes,
god.
you got it. Yes. Each piece is actually exactly 100 words apart from the last piece because
Oh
like
my
so that I
god.
could get this feeling of incompleteness, you could say.
Oh my god, I did get that. And when I
Yeah.
was reading it, I'm like, do you want to continue? Like, you should continue. I want to read more. So I always
Yeah.
felt
Mm.
like it's either I could explore it on my own, and I'm like, okay, I need to know more. Like, can he continue?
Yes.
Like, some of the pieces were really, really like it was very nice to start, and then like you get so engrossed, and you're like, just stopped.
What's
I
next?
don't-
Yeah.
yes,
There is a flow. Like the next piece kind of connects to the previous
kind
one,
of connects. Yeah, then you realize you're like, oh, okay.
but it also stands alone.
And
So
yeah,
hey, good job. You were able to project that. So 100 words. Why 100?
100. Actually, there's no reason. I don't really know why I went with 100, but I think it's just enough tension. I think 100 words is just enough tension for me, and so that
and
I,
also for your
you
readers.
know, yes, for the readers, of course,
Was that a
and
factor? Did you also think, oh, people are gonna wanna read short stuff?
yes, I also took that into account, and in a way, the shortness of it is like also conveys this okay, the because songs, right, are usually short, so I also went with the kind of same logic there, that the pieces
Yeah.
could be short, just as short as all the songs are in the playlist.
Okay.
This is very interesting because when I wrote, it was like I think it was less of logic, a lot of more of emotions. And when I see you writing, it's very well constructed from the way you think, from the way you write, and from the way you present. And the
Yeah.
fact that you're doing research, I done no research. It's just all my emotions and things around me. And to
Oh.
be honest, I never thought of researching things to write. Now that you guys mention it, now that you mentioned it, I'm like, that'd be nice to go through the ages and write something different. So yeah, that's really really nice.
Like to add to that, that's also why when when you're a writer. So people constantly ask you, okay, so who are your favorite writers or which authors influence your work the most?
Yes.
Um, I never get to have a straight answer because I find that the things that inspire me to write the most are not other written works. But yeah, sure, of course, those are inspiring. But then yeah, so there's music, or it could be art, or it could be even just the most random thing you saw, like on the road or as you're walking, and then something catches your eye. I think
Yes.
that's the thing that makes us writers, or that makes us creators, whereas we can turn virtually anything into a story or a narrative.
Yep.
So yeah, research is always helpful. uh I also do that. I also like get into, I also try to immerse myself in somebody else's shoes. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it still comes back to me and how I filter the experience with my
Mm.
words.
Mm.
So how much of your work is you and how much is imagination, would you say?
Hmm. In terms of that, well, technically, all of it is in here basically. Um, they all start out as random thoughts, but then I somehow find a way to give substance to those thoughts, and it's right there in front of me, like magic. You could say like all writing is magic to me.
Yes. Yeah.
I gotta agree
Agree.
with that.
Yes, because what was nothing before is something now, so that's
Oh,
magic.
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess what I wanted to ask is how much of yourself is in your work, or how much of it is you versus who you are in real life, like who you are when you write.
Mm. Ah.
Like if I read your work, Shelby, can you say that that is your personality in real life?
For me, um, I would say some. I think I would say 50% of it it's me, and 50%. I think it's 100% me actually. I would say so. 50% of me just feeling whatever emotion of whatever I put out, and another 50% is also me trying to pacify myself about the emotions that I'm feeling. I guess it's like 100% me actually.
Yes.
Hmm. How about you guys, Camille and Robin? Oh no, Camille, I since you like wrote it out there yourself and everything,
Well,
it's pretty clear.
Hmm.
it's something I think about a lot. Like when I like who I am when I write, is that who I am in real life? Existentialism, right? Because I feel like there is more to my personality than what I write. And it's a
Yep.
challenge also to how do
True.
I bring that to the page? Or is
Mm,
this dimension of myself something I should write about? Or is it
mm,
maybe just not the stage or the time yet? Because I think the girl who was writing my stuff, the stuff I've written like 10 years ago, that's a different person versus the stuff I'm
mm,
writing now. That's
mm,
why it's always like a joy for me to reread and look back, because I'm trying to make sense, like, is this really the same person writing these things? But obviously the answer is yes. But then there's also differences, and I think that's what writing is. It's not purely just you write, 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 write. It's also
yes,
living, 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 right? Everything you've gone through and lived through in life eventually shows up on the page.
But I have to agree with that.
Do you look back at your earlier work?
I do. It's so funny when I look back. It's such a. I mean,
Actually.
as you say, it's the same person, but the way I've written and the things that I've written about is very different. I think when I was younger, um, I don't know. I wrote a lot about teen stuff, a lot about war. I'm always like very angry about stuff, and I think at this stage, I think maybe it was COVID. I think I wrote a lot of things about being accepting of who you are and what's happening around you. So I think it's that time frame. I also think I have like grown. The situation was such, so I did evolve. I think so. Now that I mention it, maybe it's not 100% me. It's a fragment of me during that period. So I probably write different things as I go by when I age, or I don't know when the time when there's a different surrounding and stuff. Yeah. You guys reread what you wrote like way back?
Sadly, sometimes. But yeah, yes. I feel we're always in a process of reinvention. Like even when we introduce ourselves, like that decision of what do I include, what do I share, what do I not share. That's very similar to the process of writing, right? What details do you show here? Or it's like how the three of us could be looking at the same thing, but we'll never write the same lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I guess it begs the question, can you ever really separate yourself from your work? I guess not. Because sometimes there are people who say, oh, I love his or her music, but he or she is a terrible person. Like there's
Mm.
always that debate, like what how do you appreciate good art that's done by, let's say, monstrous men or women? It's it's yeah, just the things I think about for breakfast sometimes.
Quite heavy things to think of at breakfast, but all right.
Yeah, same. Apples, oranges. But yeah, I
That's why you asked us how much we got work.
Because it's also how much of your
I
real
like that.
self do you want the world to know, right? How much of your
Ah,
authentic self is for
Yes.
public consumption? I bet there are things that you're
hmm.
scared to write about, but you can, but you'd rather not.
Yeah.
That also says something about you as a person and writer.
Mm.
Mm.
I used to never write poems. I used to be more like just creative nonfiction, prose, like, blog style. I used to think I was not worthy of writing poems until I'm just like, oh, screw that, right? It's not poetry that's intimidating. It's just that I am intimidated by poetry. So I guess that's one hurdle I did get to cross in my writing journey. So now I find it joy actually to be writing poems. Whereas before I would never dare call anything I write poetry. Was it always the same way for you guys? Was there a time where like can't write poems? Or was it always this was your medium?
Hmm. Well, um, well, I have to admit, I wasn't really I wasn't really able to write much poetry, and I haven't read much poetry either. But I'm trying to rectify that fact by learning step by step. Like I admit, I still have a long way to go in poetry, but it really helps to read other writers and to get exposed to all kinds of poetry. Like, personally, I love free verse. Like free verse has much potential
Yeah.
and very big potential. Free verse.
How about you, Shelby? Do you ever think about diversifying your writing style?
Oh yeah, I never. This is my first time writing poetry. Actually,
Oh,
Mm.
I'm not a poetry writer as well. I was also very intimidated. I thought you have to be like the super intellectual being where your mind can see so far and you start writing, penning down
Ah.
words. I was always afraid. And then you read stuff like I don't know Rumi or Hafiz, and you're like, what the hell are you thinking about to write all these things? I'm gonna take. So I did write like short stories and stuff. And I was always like in a very whimsical elements, and I wrote a lot about current uh, current I don't know society issues and stuff. So it was like kind of serious. So poetry is very
Mm.
new for me as well. Actually, one day I just started writing, and my friend was like, "Hey, this is pretty good," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Maybe I should start writing more. Then I started writing more, and people, some of my, I think I also had like a good support, and everybody was like, maybe you should do poetry, like instead of like writing serious stuff, because I get so immersed. I mean, like I get so connected when I write serious stuff. I get so like,
Mm.
this is happening. Like, what can I do? So they were like, okay, maybe you want to chill down to poetry, and that's how it started actually.
Mm.
Mm. We
Do
all just
any
have started.
do any of you do other forms of art? Like maybe Robin, if you're into music, do you also play music?
Well, I have to admit that I play a bit of keyboard, but I only can do the right hand, not the left. So yeah, yeah. I know some keyboard, but only the right hand, sadly. So technically, it's not much. I couldn't do much. But I do art sometimes. Like I've done digital art on Google Keep actually and paint very primitive mediums so to speak, but it still counts, right?
Yes.
That was still art.
I think you
Yeah.
designed some of your covers.
I actually designed all of the covers
Oh,
I
okay.
made. They believe it or not, they were done on MS Paint. Oh,
Oh, oh,
Oh.
okay. Master Race.
it's
How about you, Shelby? Any other interest in other
Um.
art forms?
Yeah. I actually like I am doing classical Indian music. So I
mm,
know a few instruments to a certain level. I used to dance. That was way back then, and I stopped because I kind of injured myself. But I was not an expert dancer anyway, so it's okay. But right now I'm doing vocal for classical Indian. They call it Carnatic actually. It's a
mm,
South Indian music form. Yeah, so that's my biggest thing. I also really love theater. uh I like watching it. I'm not very good at it, but I love watching theater. I love museums. I like a lot of artistic stuff, but if something that I'm doing it by myself, it's probably just music.
mm,
How about you?
Um, Writing is my main my main medium, but I always turn to other other ways to express myself to help with my writing. So sometimes when I'm not able to write, then maybe I'll try something visual. So maybe I'll paint a little bit or I'll make collages a little bit. But I'm never as proficient with the other thing as when I'm writing. But I always find it helpful to turn to a different art form, and then it just rebounds or it just goes back to writing. So also I also surf, so I find movement or like anything to do with just freely moving your body, like you dance. So I find that also helps with my writing. And so recently I've also been into running, and whenever I run, I also think of what Murakami said when whatever what I think about when I think about running.
running.
So I find that there are these connections that in our body. Like it's not always like we're just stuck in a room trying to type page after page, right? So the writing process isn't always just that. Or
Mm.
like as a writer, like paint yourself as a writer, it will always be like you just like staring out a window or staring out into space. Like that's a writer, right? It's never like the active pen or like typewriter. It's really just like that's what you do. But sometimes when you're stuck, I find that turning into other forms of art is what gets you unstuck. So anything to do with your hands. So sometimes it's cleaning, sometimes it's even something as basic as washing the dishes or like, cooking, baking. I find that there's always something there to help you with your writing. I don't know if you feel that way too.
I do. I think in the time that you take space, come back to writing, when you do all these things, it kind of gives you like, I don't know, is it a better thought process? I don't know, it like kind of sets your brain into a space where you're ready to write when you do all these things. Gives you like different zones and stuff. Like when I'm something like that. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it. Like it's just like your brain is finally properly aligned to write when you do this thing. It's like, oh, I'm ready. Given me like food, I'm ready now. Oh, is that why you like water? Because you surf? That is so cool. I'm
I
like so
actually
afraid of water. To be
I
someone who
actually
likes to be in the
became,
water.
uh, it, I became more confident as a writer when I learned how to surf. I think
Ooh.
it's that confidence building and getting to know how to move your body. That's why I always find it's important to not just be a writer like you're caged in your room and like you're just
Ah,
words,
you're
words,
right.
words, words. That's why I also like songs like being a comb for your thoughts.
Mm, like that.
True. I have a question for both of you actually. Apart from the poetry you've made, have you written any other forms of writing? Like, for example, short stories or maybe excerpts of novels or anything remotely different from poetry?
Mm.
Shelby mentioned she used to write short stories.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I still have a collection. So I'm actually thinking of like doing it. I mean, like starting it back again because the short stories was actually like was based off one character of this really old person just living alone,
Mm.
and about the story whoever passes by in front of his house, everyone like animals that pass in front of his house, people that pass in by his house, even like I don't know, like yeah, anything that passes in front of his house, they have a conversation with him. Oh, now that I talk about it, I feel like writing again. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Hmm. Me, I write a lot of essays. So creative nonfiction is really my original format. It's also what I do for a living. Do you also
Mm.
write for, you know, not yourself?
Living.
It's
Tell
so I
me, yes.
Campus, wait, journalism. Like, well, yeah.
there is also that.
Everybody
So
here writes for living as well.
what was
You
that?
write for so you write for living as well, like for work.
I do. I do. I
Mm.
write articles as well. That's also something I balance. Like when I write for other people, I have to make sure like there's a healthy ratio. Whenever I write for other people, there also has to be something written for myself.
Mm.
But then yeah, so essays mostly like travelogues or like feature writing, feature essays. And there was a bit of sports writing as well because I did cover like, surfing competitions, so that's more
Mm.
journalistic. I like the changing of gears, the changing of tones. Um, but ultimately, it all began with fan fiction, I would say. Like when you watch certain anime and you write your own versions of how the story should go. I wrote a lot of fan fiction when I was younger. So the early Ghost Fighter, Hunter x Hunter days, Ray X.
Oh, wow.
That's when you
Oh.
that's when you know, character development or plot. But recently I've not gone back to fiction or short story. Yes,
Mm.
go fanfic. Back when they were in Yahoo groups. So I'm giving away my age here.
Well.
Did you live to see the light of Yahoo groups?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I might have
Yes,
been too young.
that's exactly what I mean. But yeah, that's good. I find maybe, but correct me if I'm wrong here, but I find that maybe writers of today or like, younger writers have way more material to help them with the writing. They're now
Yes,
you can.
and I think also they have. I don't know about support, but I think yeah, they have more avenue to write, publish, and also get support from other writers. Like back then, it was like, oh, you want to find a person, you have to like go physically to like I don't know, they have like these small things in bookstores. One writer is coming and you run and you're like, okay, finally met this writer. We can have a small workshop. Yeah.
True.
Or even just this community, like C lit, right? Like
Yeah.
if it weren't, I actually found out about this from another writer whom I met at a poetry event here in La Union. So I think you all know her, Theo. I'll promote. I have her
Okay.
zine. I just ordered it.
Oh.
Oh yeah, when I followed her, and then I
Uh-huh.
saw that she was following this group. Then when I clicked on CLIT, it was like, this is amazing. Like, where was this group all my life?
I actually found out through
Exactly.
another person I was following as well. It was also it was like another poetry group, and they posted about this, and I'm like, oh. And I was like, they were like, oh, everybody can join. I'm like, are you sure everybody can join? Is this real? Then I
Yeah,
talked to the
exactly.
staff, and she was like, no, you really can. I'm like, okay, this is amazing.
It is. So yeah, like thank you guys.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you so much.
Before it was so hard to find a space, a not safe space or like a creative space where like-minded people can connect, or you're
Hmm.
just not afraid to talk about writing because you know that the other person will get it. Maybe before, my experiences with my friends, it would be, oh, like that's her world, that's her thing. Yeah, of course she's gonna make everything a metaphor. Like, of course she's gonna have a different interpretation of, like, this is
Uh,
just something. Maybe
hmm.
you felt that. Like, of course I love those friends, it's just that it's not their cup of tea.
Mm.
So it's good to be around people who you won't sound like a total weirdo when you talk about these things.
That's true. Like, I think I have not openly talked about writing. And this is the first time I'm actually like really, really like just openly talking about how I feel about writing and how I do writing. And I've never done it before. Even with my friends, normally they'd be like, we're writing poetry. How is it? And I'd be like, yeah, this is good. I mean, obviously they're very supportive, but again, it's not something that like they really like. So they'd be supportive, but I can't discuss anything further than that. So this is a really, really amazing place.
What about you, Robin? Are you surrounded by writer friends in real life?
um, in real life, yes, I do connect with a lot of writers in real life. In social media for now. But I also
Mm.
have some writer friends here. We share pieces on occasion, and I also have a supportive um mother who I give my uh stuff to and to see if it works. So shout out to her, right? uh, to
Mhm.
her who's watching. Hi, hi, Pat. So,
Mm. Oh, since you mentioned that, I just remembered I actually have like a few friends who also write. Um, and actually, my family's like a bunch of my family's also like a bunch of nerds. They really love to read. And it's also very quite easy discussing with them about matters of writing. Like I had this one friend. He has published books and stuff, and he has
mm,
been super helpful throughout the journey of me like trying to publish the zine, because like the first time I wanted to publish the zine, I was like, I don't think so. Like, I'm so sorry. I think I was still a bit hesitant, and I was like, should I not? Should I not? And then I think he took his time to like, you should just do it, like just do it, and that's all he did throughout the process. And when I was trying to turn the zine into like a proper, I would say like a proper story, I want to do something, and apart from reaching out from my to my sister, I also reached out to him, and he was like, "Oh, okay, maybe you should do this, you should do that." Yeah, I don't know if I think he's not here, but if he's listening, thank you, Faiz. Later when you're seeing the recording, yeah,
Okay, great.
all right. It's amazing how when you start talking, you realize a lot of things that you actually had.
Look, it's been over an hour.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
time flies.
Was worried we'd
Yeah.
never get past like 30 minutes and we'd be like, how's the weather over
Mm.
there?
Been surprisingly.
Okay, more
Right.
questions.
Sorry.
More
Ah,
questions.
Yeah.
okay.
Do
I
you
think I
guys have
have
any
one.
plans? Sorry, I
I
asked
think I
first.
have one.
Okay.
So when you told your families you were going to be a writer, how did they react at first?
Oh, for me, it's still a part-time thing. So my Asian family is
Mm,
very much still okay. Uh,
mm,
I still have a day job which pays me. Uh, but I think like I've been writing for very long, and nobody has even seen the light of my writing for
oh
my
wow.
family and friends. But finally, with some, they were like, "Oh my god, you're finally doing it!" People were quite supportive, and they were more excited than me actually. So that was nice. Finally, oops. Okay. Yeah.
I think like similar as well. I think my family, they've always known I was going to be a writer. So even as a kid, that would be my favorite hobby, like trying to write my own storybook or just really into spelling. Like my mom would tell me at like when I was 3 years old I could spell spaghetti, and it didn't seem like a big deal. But my dad would have this where he'd read the paper and encircle words that he think I would like. So he'd be like, "Okay, I'm done with the paper. Go to page 3. Go to page 4. Circle the few words. Then later tell me the meaning." I grew up. I think this was really very supported, but then I didn't get into writing right away. So I did have to go through, corporate jobs and like
Mm,
management until eventually the last thing I did was I started my own business. So I got into
Mm.
entrepreneurship, and for the last 5 years, I was not really embodying writer Camille. I wasn't being myself. Like I had a different role. I had to be boss person. I had to be manager or whatever. And so only recently did I have time, I've taken time back for myself to fully go back into writing. And I think my family's reaction is like, yes, like good for you. Finally, we've always known that that's who you're supposed to be. So yeah, being a writer isn't, it doesn't raise quite a lot of eyebrows as I guess in other settings.
Oh, can I like top up and ask like how was the like what made you decide to like okay, I'm just gonna stop all this. I'm just gonna start writing. I'm like done with this. Like what triggered? I wouldn't say triggered, but like what prompted you to do that actually?
I think it was my body who first, sent out the signals. Like I would be so anxiety ridden. I would just not be comfortable. Even when I live here, I live by the beach, guys, but I'd be like the most stressed person ever. So something wasn't right. So yeah, listen to your body. It really works. And eventually I was just able to turn things over, the art of delegation. And yes, and just surrender and trust and just can't control everything. So I think that's something
Mm,
I struggle with, not just like, in life, but also when I write. Like I want it to be like a certain way, but if not, I have to let go and let the piece
mm,
be what it wants to be. So that was also something I learned. Like, I'm always drawing parallels like with my life and then with my writing life. But then you feel it when you're not where you're supposed to be. It maybe in the beginning not so much, because you find that there's like a sense of urgency and purpose. You're building a business, you're building a brand, you're trying to make money, of
mm.
course, but there is an expiration date to all of that brand building and business making, and eventually you just have to go back to your core. And that is
Mm.
why this zine is really like opening the floodgates of creativity. And like, some people go, why just a zine, why didn't you go full book? I'm like, yeah.
I get after that.
or
Book and
like
a zine.
why just online? Why not have a physical copy? I'm just like, just you wait. Lots of
Coming.
this is like my first dip in the pool, like my first dip back. How about you guys? How did your families react? Also, Steph has a question in the comments. So after this,
After
maybe.
Robin, yeah, I think I've answered that. So maybe it's up to Robin. Did you have like violent objections from your family? Don't be a writer.
Well, no, actually. They've actually been very supportive because, like, before I was a writer, I was a reader. I've been reading for years, but finally decided after this light bulb moment came to me when I was 17. That's when I decided I want to be a writer. I had to get my stuff out there, and I had to try to write not purely for myself and just maybe to give some thought to other people. That's about it. Surprisingly supportive. If not for them, I wouldn't have been as I've said here.
So Steph is asking, how much do you write for yourself versus an audience in mind? And if you write with an audience in mind, how do you make sure you're not too disappointed if they don't understand you or your writing?
Mm. Wow, that's a good question. Uh, I personally, for this book, I didn't have an audience in mind. I was just writing out how I felt and how I wanted to be classified. On the part of disappointment, I think when I finally wrote and I put it out, I knew there was going to be an audience. And a small, I think maybe not a small part, maybe a big part of me wanted them to read it exactly how I felt it. But I know that was not the way it's going to be because I had a lot of responses from people. They all read it in their own mental state, and everybody had different ideas. That was really, but the fact is, like, everybody was able to connect it even in different ways. It took me some time to understand that and appreciate that. So at start, I'm like, no, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, this is how I feel. And then I realized, no, like, poetry, it's also an open book. People can interpret it the way they want it. And there's no harm in it. So it took me some time to have that acceptance level. I was disappointed at first. Yeah. Maybe
What about
Robin?
you? I'm still thinking of my answer.
Oh.
I remember
um
because I was like disappointed, very disappointed at one point. Sorry, Robin.
oh, yeah, it's okay. Okay. To quote Roland Barthes when he said he said ano, let's see, once a work gets out there, once a work is released onto the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to
Yeah.
all the other people. So in a sense, when I embarked on that quest to write my first novel, um I had to contend with the fact that other people aren't bound to get what my mental image. I've had friend who read my work. He said kind of looks off. Then I tell him no, it's supposed to be like that on purpose. Like cause like context, my novel is kind of like this indictment of late stage capitalism. Surreal with some elements of surrealism and purposefully love purposefully place elements of love that is too good to be true, but then they interpret it as if it looks wrong, but then of course there'd be comments like that. In the end, I've consigned myself to the fact that many other people would are bound to come across different interpretations of my work, and I just have to do my best to understand them in a sense, because I'm not being a writer doesn't mean that you have all the knowledge at your disposal. Being a writer also means that you have to take into account what readers understand of your work, because the writer is only one half of the equation. The readers complete the equation.
Mm, yeah.
That's true. I guess for me, it also answers the question of why a zine and not a book. Because with a zine, I think I'm primarily, the purpose is I'm getting things out because I wrote it for myself. I didn't have an
Mm,
audience in mind by putting together this zine. Whereas I think if you're trying to hit book sales or something, like you have a sales target, then that's where writing for an audience would be a bigger factor. And I've not delved into that kind of process so much. I find like there's a lot of reverse engineering involved there. Like, okay, I have a concept, I have an idea, a story, I have a certain flavor of how I want this to be, and it's for a certain niche or like, age bracket going through so and so in life will buy this book. Um, but I find right now my process is I am staying away from that for now, because if I consider the other first, as an overthinker, with all the thoughts I have, while drinking coffee at breakfast, I think I will just be paralyzed and not be able to finish anything if I'm always going to consider how the other person will be receiving
mm,
my work. But that's not to say that it's unimportant. Like, there will always be a time where you have to read the room, right? Like, you can't just go full on, I'm gonna write about this, I'm gonna attack so and so political dynasty, and right, like there's a certain censorship that happens. Like, we go back again to the process of what to share and what not to share. That's the very first act of writing before you write anything down. um So yes, that's also something you constantly balance and try to find a harmony of. But right now, I'm really just getting back into. I'm doing this for myself. I'm finding the pleasure of writing. What I want
Mm,
written. And ultimately, if people come, if people want to read this, then I've found a certain group. And then it's also a question of, okay, like if you're an artist, right? People love the first album. So is the second album gonna be like a continuation of the first, or do you listen to your instincts and make a completely new sound? So I think artists all around, or like, no matter the form or the format, will have to go
mm,
through that questioning process of what do people like. But first, what do you like?
that I think for the longest time I always wanted to write for an audience, and I was never able to complete it in a way that I felt, okay, this is it. Only when I first, like when you asked like what do I like, when I asked that and I started writing, I was okay, this feels good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I had a
What
question just now. Like, are you guys planning anything like new stuff?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, the Z
nice.
is the first step, right? So hopefully you don't, once you've started, you don't just abruptly
Wow.
fall off a cliff and no more work.
Oh, nice,
I've
nice. Okay.
actually stopped posting some of the newer stuff online. So I'm kind of like preserving that for a new collection. Whereas before,
Mm.
it's like you're after that instant dopamine rush, like, aha, a new poem, let me post it. Give me all the likes and shares. But then I realized recently that, that's kind of defeats the purpose, or it kind of preempts the work. Like you feel like you've done so much already, but then ultimately, is Instagram the best place to publish your work? And what
Mm.
if Instagram decides to sell or gets bought, and then no longer, what if your work is no longer yours? Like you're sharing rights to, I don't know. Again,
Mm.
things I think about.
Overthinking. But I also get what you mean. I was also posting in Instagram. I get the dopamine, like, oh, I read
Yeah,
something new. I'll just post it, and when people comment, I'm like, oh, this is good, nice, thank you very much. I'll be so happy and jolly, whatnot. And recently I also stopped. I'm like, I'm gonna preserve this for something better, but not to just get the instant dopamine, but something much more long lasting. And I realized, like, when I put it on Instagram, it's just that one second when they read it, they remember it, and the next time, like, nobody remembers. They're like passing through thousands of other things, and this is
yes,
like, it's an age old thing. So yeah,
yeah, that's true.
yeah. Do you post online, Robin?
Um, on occasion, I do post snippets of my work in progress, but as much as possible, I try to contain the urge to post my work because I am at a constant awareness of how much I have to improve, and I don't want people coming off with the impression that, oh, that's just my writing is just at that level, because as Camille said, writing is all about reinvention. So we have I kind of hesitate to post my work online most of the time.
Oh, I
And at
actually, Robin,
least
I wanted to ask you something else. Sorry. So I sense. I mean, like, I saw that you write really good dialogues. Have you considered like script writing? The dialogues are really good.
for film,
Have you done script writing, or are you considering script writing?
Well, I've actually been mulling over the thoughts of writing scripts someday. If not if not fiction writing, but yeah,
Oh,
but
nice. I actually really, I was like, I think when I was reading your dialogues, I had this image in my mind, like a story going on, and I'm like, oh, this will be a nice thing to see on screen as well. Someone like
Yeah.
speaking out the dialogues. It was really good. Yeah.
Are you influenced by film as well?
Yes, film is one of my other influences actually.
Mm.
Um, I really fell in love with film the moment I saw Godfather 1 and 2. Those have to be my top films of all time, I'd say. And from there, I kind of branched out to Kurosawa, for example, Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, and then other stuff. Too diverse to mention, and
And you can see it in
it's
your work though, like the diversity.
yes,
Yeah.
the diversity. Speaking of The Godfather, haven't you written a poem called Corleone Soup, Camille?
Yes, I did. That just came about while rewatching the series on Netflix. So
Mm.
it was about soup
It's
being,
about
hot. But
soup
then
with
also
food.
revenge. Like it was just a thought process. So eventually, and some personal life experiences. It was just something I built on wanting to present how, revenge being a dish best served cold, but then what if we make it hot, like soup? But then, yeah.
Mm.
So just one of those things. That just came that night that I did rewatch the films. And
Mm.
so much of it I did not remember. Like it was like watching the films for the very first time again. Even though you've seen it many times before, I always get that feeling like, oh, how come I don't remember this part? You also, even with books you've read before, right? When you reread them, it's like you're reading them again for the very first time.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like you get this temporary amnesia, and you see those perspectives again for the very first time in a long time.
Which brings us back to we're not the same people when we first write or read anything or watch anything.
True.
So
Yeah. Never the same person. A new person every day. Like things happen around you. You learn new things. It's amazing.
hey, more questions for us, Raf or staff?
Bring it back to them.
You guys
Oh,
want to
I
wrap
have
it up?
I just have one question actually. So
Okay.
I don't know, like the writing scene. I'm from Malaysia, by the way. Since I didn't say that just now, I live in Kuala Lumpur. So the writing scene here is not that. I would say it's not that great. Like the nearest thing I could get is probably Singapore if I want to get some workshops done. It's like I think even for poetry readings for this last 1 year, I've only heard about two or three. It's like so difficult. How is the scene like in Philippines? Like I never explored beyond Malaysia and Singapore, to be honest. Yeah.
Is there a literary scene in Iloilo?
Actually, quite a big literary scene in Iloilo, and I'm proud to say that one I've participated in the Iloilo literary scene. We actually have this yearly tradition called the Iloilo Mega Book Fair, and in which for 3 days or more writers of all kinds could collaborate, could sell their works on site, usually at Festive Mall or Mega World. Um, and there are talks by Palanca award-winning writers, and sometimes music is also played in those events. So it's not just a purely literary scene. It's also cultural. It's musical. It's the arts of all kinds.
I think
I-
here, specifically in our region in La Union, it's just budding. It's just starting whereas completely no events before, and we only actually really have one library. We don't even have a bookshop in our town. There's only
Mm.
one. That's where I also met Theo, and it's all just starting. So it's also crazy to be like you're just hanging on to, okay, is this gonna work? Is this gonna flourish? Are we gonna attract more like-minded people? Will we meet new writers?
Mm.
But hopefully, yeah, like I want to host um like our own zine festival here. Like, you're just like casting a net and see if you catch any fish. So
Mm-hmm.
I got the idea from here. I just finding the right people to team up with and try to do it, because there is a need for it. I think, especially after 2 years, the pandemic and everything, and like mental
Mm-hmm.
health issues being more prominent with younger and younger folks. I find that maybe art, it's the healing balm or the salve that we all need. And why are we even still, why are we all even alive, right? So, yeah, I'm just not gonna be so hesitant and reluctant anymore. And maybe if that's what it takes to create more than just, your own work, if you're also gonna be able to help other people find their writing voice or find their writing style, then yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
good. That's quite inspiring, really. Maybe I should start
true.
something here as well.
Yeah, maybe like in your own block, you'd be surprised. Like really creative people just afraid to take the first step.
Could be
Yeah.
pioneers in your respective locales then.
I
Even
don't know, well, but sure.
like
That's
who knows?
nice.
Knows you could be the next in Kuala Lumpur, Shelvin. You could be the next in La Union. Camille.
Yeah, we'll ask tips from you, like how do writers
Yes.
workshops usually go, or like stuff like that.
Hmm,
Okay.
Okay, I have no more questions.
same.
Well, actually, I can chime into that like question about the writing scene in the Philippines.
Mm.
So yeah, I put a comment like literati, although that's kind of a slur. I can't remember which writer uh, used that to describe Philippine writing, but it's a little bit gatekeepy because actually the writing scene here has a pretty long tradition, and
Uh-huh.
so it's pretty heavily captured by um, I would say the universities and academia.
Mhm.
And so there is this like gatekeepy culture where older writers kind of uh well
If
there are like national awards, and there are these like
Mm.
prestigious things that you get into like workshops and whatnot,
Mhm.
like um there's one nearby Iloilo, right, the Cinnamon Writers Workshop.
Dumaguete.
Ah,
um
yes. One in Negros Oriental. Dumaguete. Yes,
yeah,
Dumaguete.
I mean like an island away, I guess. uh Not quite near, I mean, you know what I mean.
Hmm.
um so yeah, it's a little bit gatekeepy, and there's actually a lot of politics involved, a lot of
Mm.
politics. There are different factions, and like the factions, they actually quarrel a lot. It's kind of toxic actually. um so yeah, especially a lot of that is in Manila actually,
Mm.
and if you're a writer from here, it you can get sucked into that. And like, I mean, I actually have friends, Steph has friends in that world. I mean, like the young people I guess are fine, but it's more of the old people. Not to be ageist or anything, not to
Mhm.
generalize, there are a lot of cool old people too, but Yeah, I mean, that's a big reason why one of the big reasons why we started Seeded Circle, actually.
Mm,
Um, and why we kind of made it not a Filipino thing. We made it like a Southeast Asian thing because
mm,
we thought if we make it a Southeast Asia thing, we can remove a lot of that like politics and like I guess yeah. So
Thank
I
you
mean
so much.
yeah.
that's half of this story. Although like
Mm,
uh, I do want the, of course like that's just half of the story, but the real reason is we want to connect with other Southeast Asians because we have a lot in
yes.
common and we have a lot in common, but then also it's like where those differences are that you can also discover yourself. So
Mm,
like having these kind of conversations, you realize how we're alike, but then also how we're different and how we're different, you realize what makes you yourself unique or whatnot. But um yeah, I mean um although like it's more the English speaking Southeast Asians that are coming. Like for example, we don't have any Thai Thai members at all. Like we have like two Vietnamese members.
uh-huh.
Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like we have like Indonesian members as well. So like, but yeah, quite a few Malaysians. Right. So more of the English speaking ones, but yeah, I mean there are topics that we discuss here that obviously like you can't really it's not really relevant in the international sphere, like
Mm,
colonialism, neo-colonialism, that kind of stuff. Um,
mm,
I guess cultural stuff, family things that only Asians would really understand, like Southeast Asians would really understand. There's also like the Chinese diaspora in Southeast Asia. A lot of Malaysians. I mean, a lot of Malaysians are Chinese Malaysians, Filipinos. Also, we have a few like
mm,
Chinese diaspora
mm.
in Southeast Asia. Um, I think we have one friend from Malaysia. Obviously, Steph and I are Filipino, Chinese Filipino, but we also have a few other Chinese Filipino members. Uh, yeah, but like that's not the sales talk, seal it or anything like that. It's just uh, I'm glad that it's able to like reach people that otherwise wouldn't have that community, and that's why we made it online also because
Mm,
uh it's great of course to have like a local scene where you can see each other face to face or eyeball to eyeball, right? But
mm,
for some people it's not accessible. But yeah, definitely like if there's a synergy like what happened with Theo and Camille where they met in person and then they're introduced to the digital, and there's this it also works the other way where you meet in digital and then you actually met in person. So there is that
mm.
synergy that's going on. So yeah, for sure. Like it's super awesome that you're gonna you're going to organize like a La Union Zinester, thing.
If I find her, yeah. I can't do it by myself, but it's an idea I'm definitely entertaining.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. So yeah, I mean like I don't know.
I think it's
That's
the
all.
power of new technology, new media, and just it's time for the younger generation to do this shit. Because the old guard eventually die off, right? So who's gonna do
Yeah.
their stories? Who's gonna do all the storytelling? So
Yeah, and the way the old guard do it, it's like like I said, they're kind of gatekeepy about it. So it's
Mm,
awards and like you're prestigious enough to get selected for this and that, and like it makes things competitive. And like that's why
mm,
for example with us, like with the zine thing, we didn't have any zines or workshops or anything that we do. We don't have any like screening process where there's someone who's a arbitrary arbiter of like whether a work is good enough. um
mm,
and like and what I found is that like sometimes like the works like aren't the shit, but people do have something to say, and that's still important. And like
mm,
you still get something out of even more mediocre works. And the thing is, like, everybody has. I want to talk. I'm not even a fucking writer, but uh, everybody has started somewhere, right? And like, you, you get better at it over time, and so that's what we're. That's another thing we're trying to do.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's pretty cool to see members um like we have members where before they never published, and then after they join. I mean, I'm not saying it's because they joined that they got published, but it's cool to see them grow. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll add just one more thing. Um, with the gatekeeping, much of the offenses, like they're trying to keep certain standards, like there's a certain way for it to be, considered literature. I don't
Yeah.
know, but if you know, like specialty coffee, like, the whole third wave movement, like the whole coffee shops these days, there's like a certain way to make coffee.
Yep.
You have your weighing scale, you have um grind size, and
Yeah.
then the roast date. So of course there is value in all this process and all this, just curating standards of how coffee should be brewed and how it should taste. But then also that's not accessible to everyone. Like at any given moment, would you have like a grinder with you? Would you have the right filter and the right, the scale, etc.? So it's not to say that you can't enjoy coffee anymore just because you don't have all these specialty things. Like you can be
Mm.
free brewing and still be able to enjoy a good cup of coffee. Like it's the same thing, I think, with the whole literati scene. Like, yes, you can create really amazing, legendary work if you go through this stage and you know the right people and you have access to the right platforms. But at the same time, it should not take away from the experience where me as an individual, I don't have access to that, I don't have access to that. It doesn't mean I can produce a really kick-ass piece of art. So yeah.
So
Mm.
what's your business venture? A coffee shop or something? That's
It's
just
a coffee
okay.
shop.
Oh my
It's a
god.
coffee shop, yeah.
Oh, it was okay.
Mm.
I'll
Good
plug
guess.
it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I also want to say, like, the other thing too, the government or like the state gets involved with the writing scene. This is something that I've noticed, or we've noticed at least in Singapore, where on the surface, well, in the Philippines it's definitely like that, and in Singapore there's definitely a big push for it. Um,
Mm.
Here there's like the center of there are like cultural centers, or like state
Yeah.
sponsored
Mm.
like various writing things that are state sponsored. And I'm not too familiar. Well, the thing is, like, there's always kind of like a agenda or like a image, or like, certain things that these centers want to publish or want to talk about or want to, like, focus on. So like there'll be like trends that is not set by the audience or like the readers who care about the stories. It's set by like councils or like whatever are, like, again, arbitrary things that centers think of. So there'll be trends like, for it's like, it'll be like, oh, we only want to hear about like poverty or like natural
Mm.
disasters, or whatever the thing is, like, maybe now it will be like climate change or whatever. And definitely I've seen this happen in Singapore. The government recently, well, relatively recently, really pushed for to like grow their literature scene. And they pour a lot of money into that, and I think on the surface it looks quite successful,
Mm.
but actually on the ground, the readers aren't really digging what's being published, because a lot of it is like Singapore state centric. And yeah, that's kind of insider info. Well, how is it insider info? Because we talked to talk, yeah, but yeah, because a publisher told us that basically people aren't really buying the books, because the locals aren't buying the books, because it's like food in Singapore, or like tourism stuff in
Yeah.
Singapore, and like all this stuff that like Steph says it's for a white audience. I don't like saying the word white. Maybe Western. Yeah.
So
So it's
basically,
like
state sponsored.
we're gonna write about Singapore and talk about Singapore, but then the readers don't care about
Not for
Singapore. Like the
Singaporeans
locals
though.
want to hear like about their own stories, their
Mm.
experiences. Whatever it is. Maybe it's like family stuff or like I don't know, getting caned in public. No, I'm just and now I'm shitting on Singapore. Not kidding. But yeah, so that's the other thing too, and we also like try to avoid getting the state or like involving the state in our community because we know
Mm.
that not just state but also advertisers and corporations and that kind of thing. So we really want to keep it like I guess grassroots and people centric. Like we didn't
Mm.
approach any for this festival, for example, we didn't approach any like media outlets, and that was a very conscious thing. Um, we would have probably been way more popular and way more successful if we had done that. Um, but yeah, we just don't want like to involve those kinds of influences. So yeah, we're kind of
Understood.
conscious about those things.
Mm. I think
Robin,
Robin
you were
wanted to ask something. Yeah.
Wait, what?
you were
You
gonna
wanted to
check.
say something just now.
No, 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 no. Oh, that
No?
was no.
Okay. Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, because like I feel like if you just write if people just write about their own stories or whatever and not be influenced too much by like, oh, if I write about this then I will win this award, or if I can do this and I might be blah blah blah, and like nobody gives a shit about that. Like the only people give shit about that are like people who want to climb this like you know literati ladder, and then
Mm.
eventually they'll get to be the ones to tell other people what to write about, and it's just a kind of a circle jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just ranting now. You know.
It's okay, you can rant.
Yeah, because like I mean, well, in the West, like I don't know why is it that like publishing or like literature here in Southeast Asia isn't as
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I think that's why.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons at least, or part of the problem. The other thing is like, okay, here's another fucking rant. Like, the other thing is like, uh, 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 publishing rights or like, um, uh, copyright laws and things.
Uh-huh.
Um, so this is good. I don't know if you're interested in hearing this. Let me just get into it. So, publishing, I think like people sort of think that copyright is meant to protect authors and writers, but actually they're there to protect publishers and corporations. And I think because here the publishing industry is like trying to sell us Western books,
Mm.
they are able to benefit from the monopoly that's created by having these like publishing rights or copyright. And so they're actually paying for books that are way more expensive because we're paying Western prices for books. So you'd have like a publisher or local publishers who publish like international titles, but then they're pricing it international prices as well. So for example, like if you go to the bookstore and you want to buy an international title, you're paying let's just say 500 pesos or about $10, which is our daily wage here. So like if you want to buy a book, you need to pay a day's worth of work, right? which makes literature actually extremely inaccessible for Southeast Asians, just because of the purchasing power disparity, or like and that's actually because of the that's due to the monopoly that's created because of of these publishing rights. Of course, the corporations, they benefit because they can charge us a lot of money for the books, but the people don't get to like the people don't get to enjoy the literature because it's not as accessible. But like, what does the world look like if there isn't any copyright or publishing rights? Then it would mean that anybody with a printing press could, copy and distribute international titles for, and they would compete so that the prices of these would be very, very cheap. And that doesn't mean that, like, you'll have low quality books. Actually, it's the opposite. You'd actually have higher quality books. You'll have um have Harry Potter in 10 different versions. There's the one where it's super cheap, cheap paper, cheap paperback, everything is super cheap and super accessible. And you'd have the high end version where it's like super nice, hard. The cover is different. You'd have many of these covers, and they'd all be unofficial. They would all be like off license or whatever. But it would also mean that Filipinos or Southeast Asians of all class can appreciate this literature, and like overall they would then, because like you if you can't access literature, then you're just not into that. If it's accessible, then you would look for more of it, and you get into it, right? So you'd eventually also look for local literature and stuff like that. And so like I think that's the other big reason why, and I think that's a bigger reason. It's not so much the literati that's the issue. I think it's more on uh, actually
Yes.
uh,
Mhm.
the way the industry works with copyright and things.
I agree. Yes. Like, how would
Yeah,
you know you? How would you know you like reading if you don't have much to read at your
exactly.
disposal? Or how would you know that you are a writer after all if you just didn't get into it because you didn't know how to get into it?
Mm.
So that has always been, yeah, like the Western world, they're just more privileged, I guess, to have
Yep.
more access and just more opportunity for that. When you say you're an artist in that part of the world, it's understood, it's accepted. People actually do exhibits, and art galleries are a thing. They're as um, it's basically just an extension of a cafe or a bar. It's part of
Yep.
socialization and everyday culture. Whereas here, you'd be hard pressed to, like I said, like we only have one bookshop in the neighborhood. And even trying to fill that gap is intimidating because also you'd have to talk to, the big players or like the industry players. Like, how do I
Mm.
get copies of these books to sell? you know um it becomes a business, so more
Mm.
than it being an art serving the self, or for the fulfillment of the soul, it becomes, yeah, an industry. It's a business model. It has to have an ROI, and it's not doing that. If it's not the agenda that they want, then that's why there's an important that it's important for grassroots movements to really take place first
Mm.
and foremost. Yeah. So it's also a way to keep people away from critical thinking. I think that's like the darker shadow here, where if you're kept uneducated en masse, then you're not going to know how to subvert the dominant paradigm. They're not giving you all these literature, all these think pieces or like critical essays, because then you'd know how to think for yourself. And once you start thinking for yourself, you can move more independently, and you'd be less reliant on structures that society put for you, and that
Mm.
weakens their grasp or their hold on you. So it's like their whole castle crumbling down just because you feed your mind.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
Do not red tag me. I'm not saying anything here. Yeah. So
Which
these are
is
things to watchful about.
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead, Roman.
why book sale is such a blessing. You could say.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's also why like we don't for example here we don't ban like piracy or like sharing of EPUB files and things like this.
Mm.
Mm.
So it's also a conscious decision because people sort of like, oh, that's theft. It's like, is it really?
Just like free space for you to express yourself anyway.
Anyway,
Yeah.
all right, we reached the 2 hours. I mean, almost two
Oh,
hours.
Did.
Oh, 15 minutes
God.
left.
Well, but it's really supposed to be until 10. So yeah,
Mm.
Yeah.
um, I'll
And
close
this
it
is the
out now.
last Zinester talk. We're doing the
Yeah, the
last
last Zinster.
This is the last one.
Oh, this is
Yeah,
the last one.
last one for
one.
the festival, but we're gonna do it again
More to
for
come.
sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Yeah,
I think we've just
maybe
started.
we might not do. We will have changes for the next festival. Probably not gonna be this like packed. We had so many. We have too many activities. I think for this festival, but it's been so much fun. Uh, but yeah, this Zinester talk will this Zinester thing is definitely going to happen again. I think it was the most successful part of the one of the more successful things that we did for this festival. Yeah, and it was so nice to see like there were so many people who like never published before, and then like because we did this thing, they were like, okay, now we're gonna now I'm gonna share my stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, that's
yeah. So
me.
Definitely.
last for this one, but not last forever. So
Okay. Thank you
okay, I'll
for
close
the
it out.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
So thanks everyone for tuning in to our Zinster Talk here on the platform and on YouTube. You can check out And Sometimes a Poem, Sounds, Tides, and More, and Intermezzo at slczmarket.shopify.com. Links are in the YouTube chat. Lastly, we hope to see you this Saturday at our festival and the Mini Expo. So it's also the last day for the Mini Expo this Saturday. And if you've seen my PMs or direct messages, um, we're trying to get a big crowd for that so that we can, I guess, make the venue come to life. And we kind of did it last week. We were a pretty big crowd, like almost 20 people. It was super cute seeing everybody's like little avatars. So we're hoping to get a bigger, even bigger crowd on Saturday because it's the last day and really like, I guess it could come to life. So you really don't want to miss that. Miss that. It's gonna be at 5 o'clock p.m. Hope to see you guys there. And yeah, come hang out with South. There will be there with our exhibitors. Mostly are Southeast Asian publishers. They're also student orgs from Malaysia and the Philippines, and um, we also have one freelance editor. The others are publishers from Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines. And these are like small publishers or like indie publishers. So very interesting stuff. Right.
I think this is
Good
the
night,
part
guys.
where we take a group photo.
Yes, that's right. A group photo.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, screenshot.
you ready? 2, 3. Just check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Okay.
Okay, I think
Good.
it's. Let's just do one more. Let's just do one. Someone like half blink. Right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Double check it again. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank,
Good
Thanks,
thank
night.
you
everyone.
so
Super fun
much.
listening to
Thank
you.
you so much.
Mm.
Nice to
Been a
meet
great